Want to welcome everyone to our first Spark Change Project Town Hall. I want to first say thank you to my partner in this work and co-conspirator, Julia Cuba. Thank you so much from Girls Empowerment Network. And want to just say hello to our board members. Thank you for stepping in, stepping up, and just being with us on this journey. Thank you for joining us this evening. You all are in for a real treat. Tonight, our Spark Change Facilitator girls, they inspire me. I am in awe of them. So I can't wait for you to meet each and every one of them. Their topics range from school to prison pipeline, school discipline, dating violence, sex education, and then just injustice in our school system. They are going to be talking about the things that they are most passionate about. So this evening, I want you to engage. So what we'll do first is you'll hear from these beautiful, fantastic Spark Change facilitators. Each of them will give a short 6-minute presentation. And we'll then have a little bit of Q&A, and then we'll go into our breakout rooms, and then we'll come back and have bigger group discussion. So please help me welcome our wonderful, wonderful facilitators. They range from age 16 to 18. I'm going to let them introduce themselves because they will do a better job than I can. But we are going to start with Allison Fernandez.
Hi everybody, my name's Allison. My pronouns are she, hers, and ella. I am 18 and from San Antonio, Texas, and I'll be passing it to Dia.
Hey guys, my name's Thea. I'm 16. I'm from Austin, and I'll be passing it to Kiara.
Hey y'all, my name's Kiara, and I am also 16 and live in Austin, and I will pass it to Isis.
Hi everyone, I'm Isis. I'm 17 and I also live in Austin, and I'm going to be passing it to Ari.
Hi, I'm Ariana. I'm 16 and I live in Houston, Texas. I'm the last one speaking.
All of these young women are Spark Change facilitators, and what that means, they are an integral part of this leadership team. They are helping plan everything from our town halls to our Spark Change Advocacy Day to our camps. They are leading the way, and it is our hope that we can just facilitate and be their guides. They're already great, and we're just helping lead their greatness to different things. So let's start with our first presentation. Are we ready? Yes? Yeah. All righty. First facilitator, you got it.
Hi everybody, like I said, my name is Allison, and today I'm going to talk about the school to prison pipeline. What exactly does this mean? How does this affect us, and what are some solutions? I heard Dr. Robinson say to me, we are supposed to go to school to learn sentences and not be sentenced. So what exactly does the school to prison pipeline mean? It means it is a cycle where the education system's disciplinary policies are lead students to being criminalized and eventually incarcerated. This mostly affects students of color, students with disabilities, and LGBTQ students. So what usually happens is a student gets in trouble for either a minor behavior or having a weapon on campus. Then they go to what it's called in-school suspension or an expulsion. After that, they can be sent to juvenile prison, and later in their lives, they're more likely to go to prison and be incarcerated. This is really prevalent in our community because, as we know, Black girls' prison rate is 5 times as that of a white girl, which means in 10,000 Black girls, 24 of them will end up incarcerated or in this system. Native girls 3 times, and Latinas 1.2 times. This is really affecting Texas right now. As we know, 8,920 school arrests happened and 16,514 law enforcement referrals happened. So what is the root of the problem? We know that this has to do a lot with racism policing in campuses and the zero tolerance policy. Racism plays a key role in school to prison pipeline because of institutionalized racism. As we know, institutionalized racism can otherwise be known as systematic racism, which is the prejudice and biases that are still embedded in our current society, that this reinforces the cycle of discrimination and unequal treatment, and that impacts our certain individuals or groups, like in our case, Black girls and Latina girls. Madeline said, she put this really beautifully, the school to prison pipeline is a major component of institutional racism in the United States insofar as it helps maintain racial inequality without the majority of Americans being aware that this is happening. We also have policing in school. Prioritizing school police is really worrisome right now due to the fact that there are more than 14 million students in school with no police, but no psychologists, nurses, or social workers, and the federal government is funding this excessively without validating their students' mental well-being. As we know, police are going to do what they're trained to do: detain, handcuff, and arrest. And this is happening to our children for minor youth behavior. We also have what it's called the zero tolerance policy. Now, the zero tolerance policy is the disciplinary forms that, like suspension, expulsion, and even arrest, used to punish students for things such as violence or the possession of drugs, alcohol, or weapons. In some cases, schools send their kids to juvenile or detention just for being tardy or being late on their homework. An issue that a solution to this problem would be cultural responsiveness. Now, there's two things: cultural responsiveness and cultural competence. Cultural competence is the capacity to interact effectively and respectfully with people from different racial and ethnic and economic backgrounds. However, we will be using the curriculum and term cultural responsiveness, that because it is more understanding, and it actually creates a more cultural sensitive environment for students, because it is a curriculum based on ethnic, racial, and cultural backgrounds, as well as other parts of students' identities, such as, experiences, social dynamics, and the systematic hardships that some students might face. Lastly, more solutions. We can go 3 ways: defining the police, mental health resources, and abolishing the zero tolerance policy. Now, I would say that I would really like to go to the radical way and get rid of police on campuses right away. However, a lot of people would not be comfortable with this situation. So what we can do is only require police to come to campus when there is a physical safety threat, like maybe some violent stuff happening on campuses. We can also require assessments to highlight the true impact that police have on students on campuses. The funds obviously could go to staff, mental health resources, rather than the police itself. And also, we shouldn't practice referrals to law enforcement to our youth for common youth behavior. So we know, like, the prioritizing of police is worrisome because, according to research, they don't even reduce mass shootings, but in fact they create a more inclusive environment, criminalizing the youth. So also, mental health resources are very important in this situation. How can we be sure that our students are getting what they need emotionally and even physically? Maybe they're not getting food at home, or they're being neglected. How can we make sure that they're okay, so that they go to school to learn, not to be in an environment where they can act up because they're hurting inside? As we know that 1 in 5 youth will develop a mental health difficulty, and there would be no emotional support or any mental health resources for them. So advocating for mental health policies would be good. Now, today I'm going to say a poem that I wrote myself that has been inspired by, once again, Dr. Robinson. Again, she said to me, going to school to learn sentences, not be sentenced. Pencils, crayons, pens, blue, black, red. Big dreams and visions and tests. No orange suits, prison food, lost souls, lost goals. We are the creators of the future, the doctors, the lawyers, pastors, the senators, not the prisoners, the servants, lowlifes. We are your kids, your legacy, the ones grabbing your tears. Thank you, and today I will be passing it along to Dia.
Hi, so I'm going to be talking about the aspect of the school to prison pipeline Allison just talked about that happens in school. So what happens with school discipline? So currently at the end of every year, schools have to present a comprehensive needs assessment that addresses district performance. So that can include things like academic achievement, and it has to be disaggregated by all student groups. And when you disaggregate data, you break it down into different demographic groups. So you can look at it by race, you can look at it by gender, and this has to include evidence-based practices that address the needs for students in special programs, including positive behavior interventions and support. So while this sounds ideal, it doesn't work in actuality. On the first point, when they claim to disaggregate their data, it doesn't work that way in actuality. For example, in Fort Worth ISD, which is adjacent to Dallas, 62% of female suspensions were Black girls. Meanwhile, Black girls only make up 24% of female enrollment. You have to look at why this happens within these statistics. Why Black girls are 12% more likely to be suspended than their white peers. You can't just look at race and you can't just look at gender to look at this data. You have to look at the intersection of both. It's not the same for Black boys. Black boys make up 50% of male suspensions. You can't look at just one because the female data within the POC community provides different information. We have to disaggregate our data so we can build policies that properly serve the population of the district. Next, the evidence-based programs that this practice claims to utilize are not actually evidence-based. This can best be observed in the DARE program, which I'm sure we're all familiar with. DARE brings police officers into elementary schools to talk about and namely scare kids away from drug use. However, the DARE program has been proven to be ineffective by the American Psychological Association, National Institute of Justice, and University of Illinois. And in the University of Illinois' 6-year study, it even had adverse effects in terms of negative attitudes toward police officers and positive attitudes towards drugs, which is the exact opposite of the goals the DARE program is claiming to accomplish. Schools keep using the DARE program simply to check a box about drug education. If they actually wanted to use drug education that was evidence-based practices, they would look into new and ever-changing fields because education is ever-changing because drugs are ever-changing. Lastly, this Texas Education Code contradicts itself at multiple points in terms of student discipline. It claims that consideration will be given when students are being expelled, removed to alternative education programs or juvenile detention centers, to intent or lack of intent at the time student engaged in conduct, and a student's disciplinary history. One would think this would mean if a student had 0 prior disciplinary infractions and they had something they were getting expelled for, that they would be able to discuss with the school and work out a softer punishment. However, this is not the case. Automatic expulsions happen for any amount of drugs, any amount of marijuana, alcohol, you name it. Students are automatically expelled. This consideration does not apply here. Even though the Texas Education Code claims to include that, students can often be readmitted if their schools deem them appropriate. As you can imagine, this benefits white students disproportionately. The educational programs that other students are removed to, however, do not provide them the same education at all. These programs are not required to fulfill high school graduation requirements. So schools are basically kicking students out and leaving them to fend for themselves, providing them no guarantee of a proper education or diploma. So there are things that we can do. It is not hopeless. It is not a lost cause. First, we need to specify our data. We need to disaggregate our data so that policymakers in these fields, you can have Black women policymakers who are familiar with these kinds of problems, have them work on this, and have them help policymakers to write policies and look at the students that are suffering and create ways to help these students. Next, the Texas Education Code is where all these things come from. And while that is a very big statewide problem, what can happen on a school and mostly district level is education. You can advocate to your school academic chairs and then to your district boards to have better drug education in your schools. Education is the first step to creating more openness, talking about drugs, and removing the stigma. Lastly, we need an education first approach. Schools need to shift their focus away from punishment and towards education. This is our long-term goal. And I will be passing it to Isis.
Hey, so we have to reshare the screen real fast so then I can have audio for the video I'm going to play. But I'm super excited, a little nervous. See how this goes. My topic is dating violence, so I just want to put out like a warning in case anybody is set off by what's going to be said. It does talk about like domestic violence. We mentioned that ahead of time. But hi everyone, I'm Isis. My topic is dating violence, and you'll hear me say "that's not love" a few times throughout this presentation because it's a majorly important sentence. So the One Love Foundation was started by Sharon Love, who lost her daughter at 22 years old because she was in an abusive relationship. And she started the foundation to educate young women and men about dating violence. And I chose to include this in my presentation because I took a course on the One Love website that very much was educational, and I got so much information from there. And I felt if you guys wanted to, you can also go on the website and learn more. What is dating violence and why is it important? Dating violence is a pattern of assaultive and controlling behaviors that one person uses against another in order to gain or maintain power and control in a relationship. The reason we chose to highlight this as one of the subjects during this town hall is because dating violence is something women and men of all ages struggle with, differentiating between what they feel is love and what toxicness truly is. Abuse and statistics. Abuse is not always physical. Mental and verbal abuse also play a big part in abusive relationships. Relationship violence happens in same-sex relationships as well. And men can be affected by relationship abuse and dating violence as well. 1 in 3 adults will be in an abusive or unhealthy relationship. 1 in 4 men, 1 in 3 women, and 1 in 2 transgenders and non-conforming. Women of color statistic. An estimated 29.1% of African American women, 60% of immigrant Korean women, and 23.4% of Hispanic Latino women are victimized by dating violence in their lifetimes. And African American females experience dating violence at a rate 35% higher than that of a white female, and about 2.5 times the rate of women in other races. But however, they are less likely than white women to use social services, battered women's programs, or go to hospitals because of domestic violence. Unfortunately, there aren't many measures put in place to educate or help the victims of dating violence, especially not in schools or day-to-day life. Adding dating violence awareness to the curriculum, yearly health lessons, or to be taught at home could better allow personal care and improvements in the awareness of this topic. I decided to highlight what's not love, but we could find hundreds of reasons to love someone, but it's hard to find the reasons not to. So what's not love is intensity, possessiveness, manipulation, isolation, sabotage, belittling, guilting, deflecting responsibility, and betrayal. Intensity, when someone expresses extreme feelings very soon, over the top behavior that can feel excessive or overwhelming. For example, they could say, "I can't live without you, and if you left me, I don't know what I'd do." Possessiveness, when someone is jealous to the point where they decide who you can and can't spend time with and what you do. Block them, it's them or me. And being in a high school setting for the last 4 years, I have heard this on multiple occasions, and it's not something that should be normalized. It's not okay, and it's toxic. Manipulation, when someone tries to control your decisions, actions, or emotions. Do it for me. Don't you love me? Sabotage, when someone ruins your reputation or achievements or success. Do that again and I'll show everyone the pictures I have of you. And guilting when someone makes you feel responsible for their actions and their mistakes, or makes it feel like it's your job to keep them happy. I only got with them because you weren't giving me what I needed. Identifying these toxic traits in a relationship can be difficult because we as humans with feelings expect more than we should from people who are giving less than that is required. This is a video brought to you by the One Love Foundation showing you what's not love. Hopefully it plays.
Okay, we're gonna try this again.
We've been having trouble with this every run through. I can put, oh, you can Google it.
Yes, let me try looking it up real quick. And if that doesn't work, then we'll put it in the chat.
Okay, yeah. It's just put "that's not love" and it'll come up.
Because I love you. I want to be your only guy.
Because I love you, skip class with me. Let's stay in bed today.
Because I love you, I just want to be with you so freaking much.
Because I love you.
I waited for you after Chem Lab.
You were walking with Mark?
Because I love you.
You shouldn't be hanging out with that dude.
You should know how dumb that makes me look.
I don't care if she's your lab partner.
Why do you have texts from him?
Because I love you. This number, delete.
Because I love you. This Jason number,
Delete.
And Ben,
Delete.
because I love you, I should smash your phone.
I'll let you give me your password instead.
Because I love you.
I will check your texts every day.
You got lucky. Because I love you. Because I love you.
You think it's okay?
Because I love you. You understand.
Because I love you. You stopped talking to your classmates.
and you feel completely alone.
Because I love you. That's not love.
So it is so majorly important that that is stressed, especially in a high school, in a college, in a life environment, that I love you is not an excuse. Those 3 words don't make up for every bad moment that happens, or issue, or disagreement, or argument. And if you need help, you can tell a trusted adult or confide in your family and friends. Sometimes they see something from a non-biased point of view. They see it from the outside where they're not conflicted by feelings. There are many organizations and websites and numbers that you can call or go to if you need help, including the National Teen Dating Abuse Hotline, which is the main one for Texas as well. I hope you guys really take this in and think about it, because high school is difficult, and I know that, and especially when it comes to dating, these topics are very sensitive. But I'm going to now pass it to Ariana.
Hi, I'm Ariana, and I'm going to be discussing sex education. We all have bodies, so the conversation around this should be very natural. So, what is sex education, and why do we need it? Well, sex education is super important because it provides students with the knowledge and skills to be safe against STDs and STIs. STD stands for sexually transmitted disease, and STI stands for sexually transmitted infection. But it also prevents unwanted pregnancies, and while it can't completely prevent dating violence, it can also bring awareness, like Isa said. All right, cool. Sex education. I understand what it is. But why do we need it? Everybody ends up learning about the birds and the bees anyway from porn, from social media, from my neighbor next door. So what's the deal? Why do I need to learn about it? Well, Texas struggles with teaching sex education. First of all, Texas doesn't even require sex ed. It is one of the 26 states that doesn't require it. While it isn't required, districts can opt in and out of teaching sex ed. So, for example, while HISD, my school district, might say, hey, let's teach sex education, they might opt to doing it, but they might not teach about contraceptives such as condoms, birth control, all of that. Or they could say, hey, yes, let's teach about it. Whereas, say, AISD, Austin Independent School District, could be like, no, I don't want to teach sex education. That's perfectly fine under the Texas code, which is a problem. It shouldn't be done. So, second of all, Texas has one of the highest teen pregnancy rates in the country. It doesn't rank number one in first time pregnancies, but it ranks number one in repeated teen pregnancies. So if a girl was 13 years old and she got pregnant for the first time, she's likely to get pregnant again before she is 20. So that's another problem. But it also has a problem with safe sex. Less than half of the teens report having sex even use condoms, and an even smaller portion use birth control. And third of all, Texas has only just approved abstinence plus education. Abstinence is where you completely abstain from having sex completely. But abstinence plus is, well, Texas says, yes, you can teach about contraceptives. You have to say that abstinence from sex is the only 100% method of preventing pregnancy and such. But there are no new standards on LGBTQ plus or relationship safety in the new motion that was passed recently. So all of this is about the problems and the problems with sex education in Texas. But what are the solutions? How do we change this kind of negative culture around sex education? Now, let's see what works. Required sex education does work. Teens are going to be learning about sex eventually. We see it all the time in porn, and porn isn't always a reliable method. It's a fantastical view of what sex is, and that's not what sex really is. So it's better to learn about it from respected educators, from teachers in our classrooms, from reliable individuals than from porn. And second of all, emphasize the importance of safe sex. Teens are going to have sex. We can't physically prevent them and put girls and garters and everything in locks on them. So we might as well teach them, hey, this is how you can have safe sex. It prevents pregnancy, STIs, and STDs. We can't physically prevent sex, but we can provide the knowledge to prevent the problems that might occur with unsafe sex. And third of all, introduce relationship safety in sex education. Not only can this be taught from a young age, as I'll teach you in a bit, but it teaches what healthy relationships look like. It's all about bringing an awareness so that we don't have these problems occurring when these children get older. So that's really optimistic. How do we change this whole system in Texas, a super red state? Are there any school systems that actually do this, and how do we take it one step at a time? Well, it happens and it works. California and Vermont, although they're very progressive states, they have some of the lowest teen pregnancy rates in the country. California introduces activities based on consent starting in elementary. So although it's not based on sex entirely, the act of sex, it's based on respecting each other's boundaries, which should be the purpose of sex education. But I can go into that more afterwards if you have any questions about it. Vermont also discusses gender identity in middle school, and all of this is continuing required in high school, which is not really required in Texas because health is kind of seen as an optional class. And if you've taken a health class in Texas, sex education isn't really discussed. So this is all really overwhelming. This whole system, I want to change it, but how do I change it? So first of all, what you can do is you can really reach out to your SBOE representative, State Board of Education representative. You elect, well, we can't elect them. I'm under 18, but your parents elect them, and those who are eligible to vote elect them. So reach out to them. They work for you. And second of all, check to see if your school district even teaches or requires sex education. HISD, my district, does require sex education, but most of my friends haven't really received sex education. That's a problem. And third of all, you have to talk about it with the people around you. Texas didn't prioritize sex education. That's the problem. We have to change that. Thank you. And I'm the last one to present. So embarrassing. I mean, Kiara's the last one to present.
It's okay.
Sorry, Q.
Hey y'all, I'm going to talk about some injustices within school systems. So what can a school injustice look like? It can look like dress coding a black girl because her hair was too distracting or unkempt. It can also look like too much of standardized testing, such as like AP exams, the STAR test, the SAT, the ACT, the GSI, and so on. Or it can look like only having 1 month dedicated to learning about Black history and its repeated figures each year. And I care about this because I've been a student almost for 11 years now, and the transition from middle to high school has been the hardest 3 years of my life. So I can interpret the sum of all of my experiences from 3 different perspectives. As a person overall, I understand the depths of mental health and how school negatively impacts one's emotional state or mental state. And I was once a suicidal student, so I definitely understand the depths of this. As an African American woman, I am disturbed by the lack of diversified curriculum. And lastly, as a student, I feel and see the terrors inside of a place that is meant to be safe, which is our schools. So I choose to be an advocate for injustices in the school system because I'm only one of many other students who think and feel as I do. And if I can change one policy or even one district, that is what matters to me most. So, what really is the problem? Let's talk about it. The overarching problem in our school systems and boards who have the power and influence to make policies that do not serve everyone would be an example of dress code discrimination. The American Civil Liberties Union states that the enforcement of dress code is okay and legal as long as the policies don't treat boys and girls differently. They don't force students to conform to sex stereotypes, and they also don't censor particular viewpoints. But these dress code policies do, and the dress code is very consistent with discriminating against girls of color. Think about the treatment that a white girl in leggings might get versus a black girl in leggings. We can't really ensure that there's going to be equal and fair treatment across the board with this dress code. And if you think about it, why are curvier or melanated girls being disproportionately targeted? Why are we losing learning time or being suspended for makeup and hairstyles or clothes that aren't really inappropriate or a distraction, but rather a form of expression, culture, or confidence? The adultification of Black and brown girls needs to stop. Another bias of colored students would be within standardized testing. And you often hear in the classroom, we're teaching to the test. So if you want to look on the left, there is a little info about how many tests you might take starting from grade 3 up until your senior year. But standardized tests overall are meant to marginalize students of color. Too many believe that there is something wrong with Black and brown kids without really acknowledging the fact that it's really the tests that are wrong. So according to fair tests, on average, students of color score lower on college admission tests, so like the ACT and the SAT, due to racial bias. Thus, many capable youth, we're denied interest or access to so-called like these merit scholarships, and that itself contributes to this huge racial gap in college enrollments and completion. Another thing that may contribute to this racial gap are AP exams and AP courses. They are a colossal educational scam. In 2017, College Board made over $1 billion in revenue. They're profiting off of us. And there is too much material that is taught in too little time. And when it comes to students of color, they are left to this competitive disadvantage because over 4 million students enroll in AP classes each year. So when it comes to regarding college admissions or even earning the credit that they deserve, it's not necessarily granted in each scenario. These issues also follow us into our school curriculum. So, our school material is failing us as students and future adults. According to surveys, about 30% of knowledge from high school is actually applied to the skills of the average American, and about 95% of high school students forget what they learned after 3 days. So, I ask, if the information was worthwhile or useful, will we be able to better recollect what they're teaching us in schools? Another problem to take into consideration, though, would be the lack of diverse history. However, Black history is American history. There are still debates about whether Black history should be expanded for more than a month, but there needs to be more coverage within the entirety of a school year. It is crucial that we acknowledge the full extent of our history, regardless of the context or the content. Moreover, African Americans deserve to be portrayed in a different light that is not of a slave or a criminal. Overall, we really need a more diversified curriculum that is inclusive of all history, all people, and all skills that are necessary for adulthood. We can't really obtain cultural responsiveness if there is little to no representation of people who look like us, women of color, of different backgrounds and orientations, running our school systems. So, after mentioning those three controversies, I really want to emphasize what someone had told me at this job. And it's to attack the positions and not the people. And you don't really need a platform, you just need a plan. So, some solutions to consider are shorter school days, having more mental health resources and recognition, measuring our student learning without standardized testing, having the conversations with your administrators. It might be uncomfortable, but it makes some progress. Create a school club, and like I said, attack the positions and not the people. Some those positions that can be a part of what I just said might be the U.S. Secretary of Education, which falls under the U.S. Department of Education. It might be someone who is in the National School Boards Association. It might be National Education Association. It can be, there's a plethora of them. But what's really important is to keep those in mind when you are ready to spark change. And that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you.
Thank you all for those wonderful presentations. I'd like to ask everyone to unmute themselves right now and give a big hand clap. It takes a lot of courage. A lot of courage to present in front of a group, and you all did such a wonderful job. We want to take this time to open up for questions to our panelists. How about if I get us started in thinking about questions? And this is for any of our girls. When a youth says, "Well, I'm just a student. I don't have any power. I can't do anything." What do you say?
I'll actually love to respond to that. I'm big on using your voice. The whole idea that we have to amplify our voice within our communities because they will listen. They will listen to your voice because they know that they can't be educators without the students. So your voice is the weapon that you have to use when it comes to situations like this. And gathering as many peers that you can to amplify your voices together because, like I said, they can't be educators without the students.
Adding on to that, it's majorly important. I know it doesn't seem like it, but we are the future. Gen Z, this is who we are, and we are going to make a difference. And taking it to social media, which is our main platforms, you can make a difference by spreading your voice and your opinions with your friends, with your family, and just putting it out there in your own way. You can do that from home, you can do it from school, you can find all sorts of ways.
Yeah, kind of just to echo that, I with a topic like sex education, with a topic like dating violence that is so sensitive and has a lot of controversy in it, you find out after some point when you have these conversations with those around you. I've had it with my dad, I've had it with my mom, I've had it with teachers, school administrators, all of them. You recognize at some point, like, hey, I'm not going to be able to change the system just by myself, but I can start the conversation with these people and I can get, our brains flowing and the thought processes starting.
I second that for sure. I really think it's important to realize that you don't need to be someone with a platform. I see often how people, I'll just wait until I'm famous. No, do it now. Do it now. Talk like what Ari's saying, have that conversation, talk to your friends, talk to your family. I've had my own family doubt and tell me, like, you can't change the school systems. You're only 16. How are you going to do this? I got an opportunity like this, and maybe you can have the same opportunity or the same platform or foundation of people to help you figure out what your passion is and how you can create change. I think it's really important to put yourself out there, and it really just takes some bravery and courage and a plan. So yes, I second that.
Awesome. Please know that you can also use our chat if you have a question that you don't necessarily want to unmute for, but that you want to be sure that we answer it. Please be sure to use our chat function. Okay. Hearing anything from our audience? Any questions? Okay, so I have another question. When you talked about dating violence, you gave us some really good statistics, and the video was really great. Are there any things that you think, because of you had a short time to tell us things, is there anything that you wish you could have included in your presentation about dating violence that you didn't, that you think teens and young people should know?
Yes, I definitely feel if I had time, I would have included what positive traits of relationship are, or going into one. Because starting off in high school, it's all kind of the same cycle, and I think it's important to know those differences between what's good and what's bad. And I also would have wanted to add ways to prevent it, ways to speak to your friends if you see them in a situation like that. I know it is difficult for you to speak to your friend and be like, hey, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, your this and that is doing this, and that's not okay. And then be like, no, it's fine. Like, this is us. This is normal. If I could add, I would have found ways to communicate to your peers and your friends healthy ways of being in a relationship or getting out of a toxic relationship. That was a good question. Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
Absolutely. I'm taking some pause just in case we have folks that want to ask things. And I'm sort of checking the chat to make sure as well.
I have a question.
Awesome.
So basically, in I come from a country. Before I moved to Austin, I was in Nigeria, and basically, I noticed that especially in like rural places, whenever like a guy is like interested in a girl, and like he tells her, and she says no, everyone gets the idea that she's just being proud and like in a way being like superior to him. So which is why she says no, which made it really difficult for like girls to like say no to a relationship or didn't really know how to say no. Like, how do I refuse this guy that I'm not interested in? So what's like your advice in such type of situations? How can she gently refuse a guy? Or how can she respond if the guy is persistent about the idea of dating?
So I know Isis may want to speak on this because she did talk about dating violence, but also I think that while our first response, like we want to be like, just say no, yell, shout it to the rooftops, you deserve every single right in the world to do that, you have autonomy over your own choices, I do understand that cultures are different and that sometimes it can be like legitimately scary because you're afraid of like, if I say no, how is this person going to react? What are people going to say about me? How is this going to affect me? So while we want to always be aggressive and like be proud and empowering, sometimes we do have to be a little careful just to be safe and recognize culture, which is annoying, but reality. And sometimes I think the best thing is to involve people you trust. Like have people you trust, tell them like this is what's happening. I'm going to try my best to handle this, but I want to make sure that you have my back and that we're communicating and that like I'm trying to say no to this person because I'm in an uncomfortable situation. And then you can even tell that person you're trying to say no to, like, hey, it's nothing against you. This is an uncomfortable situation for me, and I'm just not prepared to have this kind of conversation with you. That would be my advice.
I agree. I was going to say, but at the end of the day, also, no means no. And if you truly are just saying no, it's not on you to make the guy feel better. You know, it's not your job to make his feelings feel good. So if your answer is no, just vocalize that to him the way that Dia said, and any other way you can come up with, and just remember your choice.
I agree with that as well. I would say that learn your boundaries first, and so you can execute those with that person. Or I think when you have an understanding of your own boundaries, saying no doesn't have to be gentle, but it can come from a place like where you authentically mean it and you don't feel bad for saying no. So know your boundaries for sure, and then you're able to tell that person whatever you'd like to say.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that great question and awesome responses, awesome answers. Do we have any other questions coming from our group? Okay, so I'm going to ask another question. So in our sex education talk, what do you do when they're trying to combat parents who say that it's a part of their religious practice, or to not talk about sex in public or in school, or that it's the parents' responsibility to teach sex education and not the school? How would a youth respond to those kinds of questions and concerns?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So there's two ways we can combat this, right? And the first way we can combat this is by addressing the curriculum first. Now, the curriculum we have right now is super like heteronormative based. Heteronormative means heterosexuality as the norm, as the basis of everything. That's a problem. It's completely just sex, 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 and the way it's the act of sex. It's about just genitalia. It's just about that. I think if we were to reform our curriculum to be more relationship based, to talk about consent, to talk about boundaries, to implement these sort of things, such as like what California has. In kindergarten, they actually have an activity based on consent in which they bring in a dog and they tell the children, they say, hey, you have to ask the owner first if you can pet the dog. And if you see the dog is starting to run away, it's starting to bite, it looks scared, you can't touch it anymore. That's an activity based on consent, and it's not super sex based, and it's actually, sorry, but it's very much consent based instead of like the act of sex itself. But it still relates very much. And then in the second scenario, we also have parents opting out of it. And this scenario that Texas also has a slip in which they give out most of the parents that opt in and out of sex education. Parents can say, hey, I don't want my kid learning this. And although that can be detrimental to the children's knowledge and their grasp of the topic of sex education, it is one of the safest routes we can take.
Awesome. Thank you. Isis, did you want to add something?
I was just gonna say, when we teach it in schools, we can do it to a broadened approach. So then we're not just focusing on like the basic, this is how you have sex with this person, this person. You can open it up and say, you can do it the way your parents' religion does, or the way this does and this does. Just, the prevention of the STDs, the STIs, the pregnancy, like it's something that needs to be taught, and maybe finding a way to vocalize it to the parents as well. Because I feel adults need to be just as educated in the new century rules as kids do. And so vocalizing to them, we're teaching them how to be safe, how to have a healthy life, how not to do this and not to do that. We're not teaching them to go out and have sex, So I feel like it needs to be a two-handed thing, parents and students as well.
Yeah, and just, I know I already spoke, but Isis brought up a great thing. Although like parents may object to this and may not find it like fitting like the base like their ideals, um, that doesn't mean that the parent is always right. And I know that's super controversial, but we've seen it recently, like in the state of Utah, in which they
late, but I have a whole bunch of tests this year and coming up. I've taken the SAT twice already. I have EOCs, I have AP exams. It's absolutely crazy. And this is a time where people are tight on money. How are people paying for their exams? You know, just all sorts of things. And how are people getting like just Wi-Fi, the basic things that you would think, oh, everyone has this. They don't, and it affects the people of lower socioeconomic statuses and people who have mental illnesses like anxiety and depression and all other sorts of ADHD. Oh my gosh, all those mental illnesses. I think it's really upsetting to hear, and I think that it's affected the school systems and even worsened the fact that they're still profiting off of us in some way. I don't know if you guys remember, but when this kind of happened a year ago, at least for my school, Zooms were not optional. I mean, they were optional. And then going into my junior year, they were. And I always asked, I was like, what happened? Like, that worked so well. Like, why was that changed? And then I realized money, attendance. Like, they make us have, why do you think your teachers are hounding you down and texting your parents? And because, they're making money off of us. I stand by this. Capitalism is one of the biggest roots of our problem, of all of our problems when it comes to the school system. But yes, I just say that it's horrible and it's affecting our school systems in almost every single way, especially just the students, like direct affecting them. So.
Thank you, Key. In regards to policing too, as well, like we see the problem now. We see that what are the police doing to help out our students right now? What, they just go there, sit in their office because there's no students. So where are the mental health resources that we need right now to be checking into our virtual students and also the students that decided to go back to campus? We see that this is a prevalent issue right now. It's pandemics like this that allows us to see the problems, our systematic problems, and things that like we realized didn't even happen before. Like now we have to have things like food shortage in our schools because a lot of our kids don't have the resources to go and get some food. They have to come to school in order to get their daily meals. They have to come to school in order to get the necessary basic human needs. So I feel like when it comes to policing on campus, it sheds lights on this virtual learning sheds light on the need of police on campuses. Do we really need them? Not really, but they're taking the funds away from mental health resources. They're taking the funds away from students, basically. So I think that I'm kind of grateful in a way that the pandemic has allowed us to see the hardships that are going through the school systems, not only like he said with like the standardized testing, but the police and campuses and mental health resources. Now more than ever, our suicide rates have gone up because of the pandemic and because of students being so stressed out in school that they feel like they should give up. So good question.
Thank you so much. So this is our last question before we go into the breakout groups, and hopefully this sort of gets us all to thinking. What do you all hope that everyone will take away from today's town hall?
I hope that each person, including, each facilitator and our bosses, all take away that, like, this is something that we did. This is something that we created, you guys created, and we gathered this information. And we are not AOC level high. When we're speaking our voices and we're making ourselves heard and we're educating others. And I think that just proves that you don't have to be on top to educate everyone, to be an influencer, to have people listen and for you to be heard. And I think that's super important because it took a lot for me to feel that way as well, for me to be up here and think, okay, I'm actually doing something that I've wanted to do for a long time. And so I hope you take away that you guys made a difference, and I'll take it away too. And each viewer here as well, I hope you guys continue on to want to learn and educate, because you can't ever stop learning, So I just want you to keep on going and know that like you're making a difference no matter what, within yourself or within others.
I want all of you to leave here with hearts full and to share the passion that me and my facilitators have about these issues. Like I said, go find your topic, go find your passion, go find the thing that makes you mad. Like, go find it and then learn about it and then talk about it so you can change, that subject. And I really want you guys to just have some faith in yourself. Me personally, this job has helped me gain confidence in ways that I never thought I could reach with myself, especially when talking about things like this. Like I said, I only feel so small, but I know other people share this passion with me and these feelings and thoughts with me. So yeah, I just want you guys to feel fulfilled. I know it's a Wednesday. We have to go back to school and work tomorrow, but just to really leave here with maybe like a new thing, like, oh, I'm gonna go learn about this. Go do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely, my one thing would be like with this project, like Kiara said, a big thing has been like connecting with other people and finding people that like process things and think about like some issues in similar ways. And that's super validating. And you can also learn a lot from other people. Just like talking to people is so cool. So I hope that you guys are able to like learn some like new issues and like find new things to be passionate about and new people to like process that with. So yeah, super
I
valuable.
also, oh, sorry, Dia. I also want you guys to take away from this town hall is the power that your voice has, because we hold so much power. Like, imagine men and society has been trying to shut women up for years because they know how powerful we are when we're speaking our mind and when we come together. So I hope that you guys amplify your voice within your community after town hall.
Yeah, and kind of just what to echo y'all were saying too. But I want to also get across is this sense of like community. Like, yes, we are speaking out, we are speaking up, but also I hope that at the end of all of this, everyone can recognize, hey, this is a community of young women that are interested in speaking up and interested in helping each other out, because that's what this is. We're speaking about issues that affect all of us in one way or another, and we're all here to help each other too. So I hope you all can also take out of this that there is a community of people that want to help you, but there are also great organizations, and that there's change coming. So shout out to EAF and girls for organizing this too.
With that, we want to say thank you, and we're going to transition to our breakout rooms, and then we will come all back together and have a big discussion. So just give us a few moments and we'll get everyone into their breakout rooms.